HSE Live, Working in Confined Spaces. Welcome to Source Energy Services' HSE Live presentation on working in confined spaces. Source Energy Services production and distribution divisions have recognized confined spaces in their work areas. Workers may be required to enter the spaces and must be aware of the training required, hazards associated, and permit requirements to enter them. Check your jurisdiction for their definition of the confined space regulations that apply to your area. They can vary slightly from area to area. The Canada Occupational Health and Safety Regulations definition: a space not designed or intended for continuous human occupancy is one that only accommodates a person so that they can perform certain tasks. It is a space that a person would only be in for the duration of performing those specific tasks. The spaces lack the required workplace safety measures of a normal workplace. For example, fire and life safety systems have not been installed with the intent of continuous worker occupancy, nor have ergonomic considerations been taken into account for the space. Non-continuous human occupancy implies that the worker's presence will be transient. For example, maintenance. The Alberta OHS regulations, confined space definition: a confined space means a restricted space which may become hazardous to a worker entering it because of an atmosphere that is or may be injurious for reason of oxygen deficiency or enrichment, flammability, explosivity, or toxicity. A condition or changing set of circumstances within the space that presents a potential for injury or illness, or the potential or inherent characteristics of an activity which can produce adverse or harmful consequences within the space. The Alberta OHS regulations. Restricted space definition: as an enclosed or partially enclosed space, not designed or intended for continuous human occupancy, that has a restricted, limited, or impeded means of entry or exit because of its construction. Refer to the SES Confined Space programs for area-specific requirements. If in Alberta, refer to the Alberta OHS flowchart to assist with determining restricted or confined spaces. The key point here is we must use the risk assessment process known as RAP 3 to assist with determining the confined spaces in your work areas. This is a sample of the recognized confined spaces in Source Energy Services. This list is not exhaustive, meaning we may have some not listed on this presentation. Pictured are some of the confined spaces identified from the production division. Note the signage and the chains restricting access to the areas. Pictured are some of the confined spaces from the distribution division, terminals. Note the signage and the chains restricting access to the areas. Hazards found within confined spaces: lack of oxygen due to natural reactions or displacement by other gases. Toxic atmosphere that can build up in confined spaces. Fire and explosion caused by flammable substances or sparks. Engulfment, buried or trapped in sand, water, etc. Electrical, exposed wires, damaged insulation, faulty electrical equipment. Physical hazards, moving parts that can lead to entanglement. Residues, products left in tanks. Extreme temperatures, risk of heat or cold stress to workers. Drowning, fill up with water and overwhelm workers. Fall hazards, areas with an open top or elevated entry point. Biological hazards, areas that can have bacteria, virus, and molds. Visibility, such as poor lighting. Psychological hazards, workers may experience anxiety or panic attacks. Confined spaces are not for everyone, and when considering an entry, it takes some planning to ensure you have enough people that are trained and competent to complete the entry and perform a rescue should one be required. Supervisors, managers, ask yourself the following questions. Be aware of employees' comfort zones prior to entering confined spaces. Ensure the appropriate people are chosen to enter the space. Consider the size and ability of the worker. Could someone rescue them if required? Ensure you have enough trained and competent employees to ensure you can perform an entry rescue. Your best defense against injury or moving equipment while working in confined spaces is to eliminate the power source. Refer to the SES Isolation of Energy Lotto program and SOPs. This is your first and most effective line of defense. And remember, only trained and competent operators shall enter confined spaces. All confined spaces must be clearly marked as a confined space, and no entry by non-trained personnel is allowed. When entering a confined space, the space around it must be cleared and marked off. Confined space permit must be completed prior to entry and reviewed with all involved. Isolation of energy or lockout tagout. Lockout conveyors when performing work in confined spaces. Refer to SES Isolation of Energy program. Do not start up equipment until everyone is clear of the moving parts. Confined space training is a prerequisite for the confined space rescue training. Rescue plans must be in place. Employees trained on the rescue and equipment available to perform the rescue. Confined space training can take place on SES sites and includes an actual entry to the space where each participant takes turns doing an entry and rescue. Lastly, always reach out to your supervisor, manager, or HSE manager if you have any questions or concerns.